What if I told you that an ancient book written thousands of years ago predicted the fate of the world's greatest empires and might be speaking about our own time? What if a single man had defied the most powerful kings, faced death, and received visions about the end of the world? This is the story of Daniel, and the film you are about to watch may change everything you thought you knew about the future. The year was 605 BC. The sun was setting over Jerusalem as the sound of war drums filled the sky. The city gates were torn down, the temple of God was plundered, and the princes of Judah were taken captive. Among them was a young man who had no idea he would play a role in shaping the future of history. His name was Daniel, and his destiny was about to be sealed. Dragged to a foreign land, Daniel saw his home reduced to ashes. His people were now slaves to Nebuchadnezzar, the most powerful king of the time. But what Babylon didn't know was that among the captives was one chosen by God. A man who would stand before empires, kings, and even death without ever abandoning his faith. The gates of Babylon rose before the young captives like a vision from another world. Golden towers, hanging gardens, colossal temples. The city seemed to reflect absolute glory. But behind this splendor there was a hidden purpose: to transform the sons of Israel into servants of Babylon, erasing their identity and their faith. To achieve this, Daniel and his companions were given new names, royal garments, and even food from the king's own table. It was a subtle invitation to embrace Babylonian culture and power. But Daniel knew that giving in meant betraying everything he believed in, and soon the first great test of his faith would arrive. The king's table was a lavish feast, filled with succulent meats and fine wines. To any other captive, this would have been a privilege. But Daniel understood that these foods had been offered to pagan gods. Eating from this table was more than just a meal. It was a silent pact of loyalty to Babylon. So he approached the chief official and made a bold request. "Let us eat only vegetables and drink water for 10 days. If at the end we are healthier than the other young men, then allow us to continue." Against all odds, at the end of the test, Daniel and his friends looked stronger and sharper than anyone else. The king didn't know it yet, but God was already moving his hand in history. The great king of Babylon awoke in a cold sweat. His heart was racing. He had had a dream so intense that he felt its meaning slipping through his fingers. He summoned his magicians, sorcerers, and astrologers with an impossible demand. He didn't just want the interpretation of the dream. He wanted them to tell him what the dream was before he even spoke a word. No wise man could answer. Furious, Nebuchadnezzar ordered the execution of all the wise men in the kingdom. Among them was Daniel. But instead of panicking, he and his friends prayed, seeking the answer from the only true God. That night, the mystery was revealed, and Daniel marched toward the king's throne to change the destiny of an empire. Standing before the king, Daniel spoke boldly. "O king, this was your dream, a massive statue. Its head was of gold, its arms of silver, its belly of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet of iron mixed with clay." Nebuchadnezzar held his breath. How could Daniel possibly know this? But the revelation wasn't over. Daniel then explained the meaning. Each part of the statue represented an empire that would rise and fall in the future. Babylon was the head of gold, but its time would pass. After it would come the Medes and Persians, then the Greeks, then the Romans. In the end, a stone, not cut by human hands, would destroy everything and become an eternal kingdom. Nebuchadnezzar fell to his knees. He had just witnessed the impossible. The future had been revealed to him. Even after Daniel's revelation, Nebuchadnezzar refused to accept that his kingdom would one day fall. If he was the head of gold, then he would do something even greater. He ordered the construction of a massive statue, entirely made of gold, symbolizing his ambition for an eternal empire. The order was clear. Everyone must bow before the image or be thrown into a fiery furnace. Thousands fell to their knees, except for 3 young men. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel's companions, stood in defiance. To them, Bowing meant betraying the true God. Their fate was sealed. The furnace was heated 7 times hotter than usual, and their execution was imminent. The heat from the furnace was unbearable. The flames roared like wild beasts. The king ordered the fire to be made even hotter, so intense that even the soldiers who threw the 3 young men into the inferno perished instantly. The crowd watched, expecting their bodies to be consumed in seconds. But then something happened. Nebuchadnezzar jumped to his feet, his eyes wide with shock. "Didn't we throw 3 men into the fire? Why do I see 4, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods?" Inside the furnace, the young men walked unharmed, protected by a mysterious figure. The king, overwhelmed, ordered them to come out. Not a single hair on their heads was burned. That day, the empire of Babylon witnessed the power of the true God. Time passed, and Nebuchadnezzar continued to rule with strength and arrogance. He looked upon his golden city, the colossal temples, the hanging gardens. In his heart he had no doubt, "I built all this. My power is eternal." But while these words were still on his lips, a voice came from heaven. "Your kingdom is taken from you." At that moment, his mind was overtaken by madness. The king was driven out of the palace, wandering the fields like a wild animal. His appearance changed. His hair grew like eagle feathers, his nails like claws. For 7 years he lived among the beasts, eating grass like an ox. Until one day, he lifted his eyes to the heavens and recognized the truth. Only God rules over the kingdoms of men, and with that, his sanity and his throne were restored. Years later, a new king sat on the throne of Babylon, Belshazzar, a weak and arrogant ruler. One night he hosted a grand feast, bringing out the golden chalices that had been taken from the temple in Jerusalem. He laughed, drank, and mocked the God of Israel. But then, the impossible happened. A mysterious hand appeared out of nowhere and began writing on the palace wall. The words glowed like fire. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Panic filled the room. The king turned pale, his legs trembled. No one could decipher the meaning until they called Daniel. With a firm voice, he revealed God's judgment. "Your kingdom has been counted and has come to an end. You have been weighed and found lacking. Your empire will be given to the Persians." That very night, enemy armies invaded Babylon. The empire fell. Time passed, and now the Persian Empire ruled the world. Daniel, now an elderly man, remained a respected leader. But his loyalty to the God of Israel sparked jealousy among many. His enemies plotted against him, convincing King Darius to sign a decree for 30 days. No one could pray to any god or man except the king himself. Anyone who disobeyed would be thrown into the lion's den. Daniel knew the danger, but his faith was unshakable. He went to his room, opened the windows facing Jerusalem, and prayed, just as he always had. His enemies reported him immediately. The king, realizing the trap, was devastated but could not revoke his own law. And so Daniel was cast into the lion's den. The roar of the beasts filled the night. It seemed like the end. But God had not yet spoken his final word. Daniel had a disturbing vision. Before his eyes, 4 great beasts emerged from a raging sea. The first was like a lion with eagle's wings, the second a ferocious bear, the third a leopard with 4 wings. But the fourth, it was unlike anything else, a terrifying creature with iron teeth that crushed and devoured everything in its path. As Daniel watched, a small horn emerged from this last beast, and from it came eyes and a mouth that spoke blasphemies against God. Daniel trembled. What did all this mean? Then he saw thrones being set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat to judge. The beasts were destroyed, and one like the Son of Man received an everlasting kingdom. The fate of the world's empires had been revealed, and something far greater was about to unfold. Seeking to understand the future of his people, Daniel studied the writings of the prophet Jeremiah. He discovered that 70 years of exile had been determined for Jerusalem. With a troubled heart, he prayed and fasted, pleading with God to restore his nation. Then an angel descended from heaven with a shocking revelation. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people. The angel explained that at the end of this period, the Messiah would come, bringing eternal righteousness. But then came a shocking prophecy. The Messiah would be rejected and cut off. Daniel could barely comprehend it. Would God's chosen one be sacrificed? He saw glimpses of a distant future, but the puzzle pieces would only come together centuries later. In the third year of King Cyrus's reign, Daniel had a supernatural experience. While standing near the Tigris River, he saw a celestial being with an indescribable glow. His face shone like lightning, his eyes were flames of fire, and his voice roared like a mighty waterfall. Daniel collapsed, overwhelmed by the divine presence. The angel revealed that from the moment Daniel began praying, his prayer had been heard. But there was a delay. The Prince of Persia, a powerful spiritual being, had resisted the angel for 21 days. Only with the help of Michael, the heavenly prince, was the way cleared. This exposed a terrifying secret behind human empires. Invisible forces battle for control of the world. Daniel received one final vision of the end times. He saw an era of great distress, persecution, and kingdoms rising against each other. But then the heavens opened, and Michael, the celestial prince, stood up to defend God's people. The final judgment was about to unfold. Multitudes who had been sleeping in the dust of the earth awoke, some to eternal life, others to eternal condemnation. The wise shone like the brightness of the heavens, and the righteous like the stars forever. But Daniel was not given all the answers. Instead he heard, "Seal these words until the time of the end." Many would try to understand, but only the wise would discern. The countdown to the end of time had already begun. Daniel's life came to an end, but his legacy echoed through the centuries. He lived under 4 empires, defied kings, survived the lion's den, and saw visions that extended beyond his own time. He witnessed the rise and fall of kingdoms and prophesied the greatest of them all, God's kingdom, which will never be destroyed. His writings continue to intrigue scholars and believers today. Have all his prophecies been fulfilled, or are some unfolding right now before our very eyes? If history has taught us anything, it is this: the empires of men will pass, but God's word remains forever. If you've made it this far, it means this story has impacted you. But believe me, this is only the beginning. There are still many hidden mysteries in the prophecies of the Bible that might be unfolding right before our eyes. So don't waste time. Subscribe to the channel now, turn on notifications, and share this video so more people can discover this incredible truth. See you in the next episode. May God bless you.